Hey everybody, I was recently asked to do a presentation on the house as a system concept at the local Building Industry Association of Louisville's Building Science Day. And what I covered in this topic was the three main drivers of issues with these systems that has to do with air leakage, moisture movement, and heat transfer, and how the interconnection of these systems cause issues that materialize in comfort problems, warranty claims, mold issues, and things like that. So take a look. I hope you learn a lot from it, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. So I want you to think about what are the most common callbacks that you get, the most common warranty issues that you get, and think about it a little bit deeper than that. Most of those issues that you get have, in one way or another, to do with some kind of a system failure. Whether that is a roofing leak caused by improper flashing or shingles or underlayment installation, or maybe you've got an issue in a crawl space like we talked about with moisture coming in. That could be an issue with air infiltration, a crappy vapor barrier that was installed. Whether it's a plumbing system that's leaking inside the house or a comfort issue that has to do with an HVAC system. These are all independent systems, but the reality is most of those issues that happen because of an interconnection with some other system that wasn't either thought about right in advance, or there was an installation error that happens. So as I go through this presentation, just kind of understand that you can't silo these systems apart from each other without recognizing how they all kind of interconnect. Whether it's an indoor air quality issue or a high utility bill issue or a humidity problem, that's kind of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to move on and talk about kind of the three big forces that drive everything with the house as a system. So you have airflow, you have heat flow, heat transfer, and you have moisture transfer. And you guys might have already talked about this morning. I didn't come in until a little bit after the last guy talked, but when you're talking about comfort issues, callbacks, mold growth, any of that kind of stuff, a lot of it starts with airflow. Where is it coming from? It's coming from some uncontrolled space in the house, whether it's going up through the attic, it's leaving through like where the furnace penetrates through the ceiling, or you've got plumbing vent stacks or lowered soffits, bulkheads, things like this. The way that houses are framed a lot of times create big pathways for air leakage in houses. Simple things like attic hatches. Even though it's part of the code, it's been part of the code since 2012, you're supposed to weather strip and insulate attic hatches in new construction. How many times do you think that actually happens in a new house? It's an afterthought. It's like, it's supposed to be on the punch list, screw it, nobody's gonna check. But that's a big source of air leakage and heat loss in houses. So if you have a bedroom that's got a closet with an attic access in it, stuff like that. So airflow is a big thing, but you have stack effect, you have wind effect, and then you have HVAC-driven pressure differences that all create air leakage one way or the other. Have you guys already gone through stack effect today?
No, you're good.
All right. So stack effect in buildings is basically a concept where air enters the building at the bottom of the building through any kind of leaks, penetrations, holes that you have. And as that air warms up, it leaves through holes at the top of the building. So the taller the building that you have, the more stack effect that you're going to have. If you've ever seen a multi-story building going up and they have house wrap or plastic around the outside of that building in the wintertime, you'll see the plastic get sucked in at the bottom of the building, and at the top it's kind of blown up. That's a perfect illustration of stack effects. Wind effects is just pretty self-explanatory. If it's blowing from the west, you're going to have higher pressure on the western side of the house, which can drive air leakage to the eastern side of the house. And then HVAC. So I don't know if Bobby Elder talked about this at all, but a big problem in houses where you have comfort issues a lot of times has to do with pressure imbalances because of improperly designed and or installed ductwork or undersized ductwork. So for the same amount of air that goes into a room, the same amount of air should go out of that room. But a lot of times you don't have a dedicated return in that bedroom. You might have a transfer grill that's going through the wall or the door. Maybe you have a jump duct. But even if you have a dedicated return in that bedroom, perfect example is a master bedroom. Usually you're going to have way more supply air going into that master bedroom than you're going to have return air going out. And I have no idea why the HVAC guys haven't figured this out yet, but that causes a huge pressure imbalance in that master bedroom, because you also have the master bathroom and you have the walk-in closets, and you might have another little room that's attached to the master bedroom. So you have a ton of air going into this space, and if that bedroom door is closed and preventing that air from going back out to the common area where it gets circulated back through the HVAC system, that room could be really freaking hot in the wintertime or really cold in the summertime because of that. So it comes down to sizing ductwork properly. But also what happens is when you're pumping a bunch of air into a room that has no way to get out of it from a design perspective, it's going to leak out from wherever it can. So out windows, out gaps where electrical penetrations go through, stuff like that. Room-to-room pressure problems was kind of what I was alluding to with the master bedroom example. This is actually something very easy to test. So anybody that has a pressure gauge and a hose can test and see if you have a pressure imbalance between bedrooms. And as a matter of fact, you don't even need a pressure gauge. If the HVAC system is on in your house and you go to shut that door, but leave it open just a crack, and you can feel air blowing out of that room towards you, you have more supply air going into that room than is coming back out, and that's an indication of a pressure imbalance. The other way that you could do it is if you shut the door completely and you put a tissue paper at the bottom of the door where the gap is, you'll see that air coming in through that way. But if you actually wanted to measure it, you need a pressure gauge and a hose while the HVAC system is running. The Energy Star standard for a long time, I think, was 3 pascals of pressure difference between bedrooms. You really want 0. I mean, if you don't have any pressure difference between bedrooms when the doors are closed, then you're going to have equal temperature distribution. It's going to be more comfortable, less likely to have issues like that. So those are the kind of methods of air leakage that you have. And then heat flow, heat transfer. I'm sure you guys talked about conduction, convection, and radiation to some degree today. 3 modes of heat transfer. And then, why, I'm sure, again, the IDI guy talked about why insulation typically does not address all 3 of those things. So when you're talking about R value in buildings, you're talking about the resistance of conductive heat transfer, and that's it. It does not take into account convective heat loss or radiative heat loss or heat gain. So that's why you have things like radiant barriers and you have air sealing layers and things like that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next section. And then you have what's called thermal bridging. Has anybody addressed thermal bridging with you guys today? Does anybody know what thermal bridging is? I know a few guys in here should know what thermal bridging is. Does anybody want to volunteer? What's thermal bridging?
It's an easier path for thermal transfer of heat or loss of heat.
That's a simple explanation, yes. So just a thermal bridging in its easiest way to explain it to you. So just understand if you have a 2x4 wall that's constructed with traditional OSB on the outside of it, that OSB is your sheathing and it only has an insulation value of about 0.5. And then you have your studs, and then in between the studs you have your fiberglass. The assembly of that wall has an R value associated with it, okay? You drywall on the inside, then your insulation, your studs. Where you have those framing members, that is where you get thermal bridging. So the heat loss is going to occur through the weak spots in the wall assembly or the ceiling or the floor assembly. That's the simple way to explain thermal bridging. And the way that you overcome thermal bridging is by either using continuous insulation on the outside of the wall. So instead of using OSB, you can use foam board, or you can use an insulated zip wall or something like that. Not a lot of people around here use exterior insulation above grade, but one place I would recommend that you do it, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, is on attic-facing walls. Because if you think about attic-facing walls are exposed to a much greater temperature difference, especially in the summertime, than they are a regular exterior wall. If the attic is 120, 130, 140 degrees, but it's 90 degrees outside, and you're trying to keep the house at 70, what is that temperature difference across that attic-facing wall? 70 inside, 130 in the attic. You have a 60-degree temperature difference across that attic-facing wall. Major thermal bridging can occur because a lot of times they don't even have OSB on those attic-facing walls. If you take nothing else away from this and you're building new construction or you're doing remodeling or whatever, just understand that attic-facing walls should be insulated much better than an exterior wall. In my opinion, building science proves it. And if you're building like bonus rooms or you're doing, you've got a big vaulted ceiling with the triangular attic-facing wall on one side or the other, that's going to be a massive spot where heat loss is going to occur in the wintertime and heat gain is going to occur in the summertime. So there's thermal bridging.
What would you recommend that to be?
So there's a few ways that you could address it. There's certainly nothing wrong with putting OSB up on it, but that's again only going to have an R value of 0.5. I think at minimum it should be 1 inch of foam board, which would be an R5 on the outside or the attic facing side of that wall assembly. Even better would be an R10, which would be 2 inches. I would not go less than an R5 in our climate zone. The further north you go, the more R value you would need. But the other thing you could do if you're gonna have it spray foamed is after the drywall's up, just have your insulation guy come in there and just coat the whole backside of all the framing, give it a couple of inches of foam sprayed onto it. So it's all sealed and insulated and encapsulated at that point in time. But I've seen people put like FSK paper up as an air barrier, and it's never stapled, it's never sealed, and that's not an air barrier. It may pass your code official's inspection, but it's not going to functionally work the way that you think it's going to.
Also, if you're installing it on a wall that has the ceiling joists coming into it as well, it needs to be cut so it can come all the way down to the drywall. A lot of times they'll install it where it just sits on top of those ceiling joists. So if you got a 2x6 ceiling joist, you got a 5.5 inch gap at the bottom of that wall where that attic here is just going to go up and in and go up it.
Yeah, and especially if that floor cavity happens to be connected to the attic space, so like bonus rooms, the way they're framed, that floor cavity is always open to the attic space on either side. So it's got to come all the way down and seal it off.
Do you have a retrofit recommendation?
In my own house, I used 1-inch foam board, so I had a lot of attic facing walls, and I just air sealed everything and then put the foam board up and then sealed, used gun foam, just great stuff or whatever, seal the gaps between all the foam boards, and that works really well. Moisture flow. So you have a few different ways that moisture gets in and out of buildings. You have vapor diffusion and you have air movement. So either by contact with something or by it's coming in with the air from the outside. You also have bulk water. So when we're talking about conditioned crawl spaces in the last session, it's really important before you ever consider doing a conditioned crawl space to make sure you don't have a moisture problem or a drainage problem around the house. And if you do, you've got a gradient issue or something like that, it needs to be addressed before you get started on even considering air sealing. That's the end of the first part of the presentation, and I'll be posting the second part here soon. So let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below, and make sure you also hit subscribe so you're notified when that next video hits. I'll see you soon.